Hi everyone, Gamma here, back for another video for this week. This isn't a chronicle, we've got a chronicle coming up this Saturday that I'll be making. This probably coming out a bit later than I intended, so sorry about that, but I had stuff I had to get sorted out for work today, and I was advised it'd be a good opportunity to probably reflect a little bit on what I'm making today's video about before I made this video, so it probably ended up doing me some good anyway. The lighting might be a little bit sharper for this video. I'm using a different light than the one I usually use. That's the one that I got for my camera. If anyone's curious, I film with a GoPro Hero 8, and the light that I have attached to my media mod has this filter for making the light a little bit softer, but that one's charging at the moment and I didn't want to put off filming any longer, so I'm using my other one that doesn't have that filter on it. So yeah, if the lighting's a little bit sharper, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I made a video at the start of this week talking about my feelings of being 1 year into remission. However, I felt that my feelings that I expressed in that video, some of them at least, were conditional on what happened this Wednesday, so yesterday, which was my 12-month check-in. So for those of you who don't know, since finishing chemo, I have to do every 2 months, I go to my old treatment centre and I have some tests done, and I catch up with my oncologist, who is awesome. She's one of the big credits for the reasons that I'm still around. She's just a legend all round, really. And I get to go and catch up with the nurses and the other patients. So I have, some thoughts on, on that this time. So it's, as you can imagine, going in period, like I expressed before, going in periodically and having it checked out to see whether, whether I've relapsed and whether my cancer's back, that carries a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of the thoughts I had at the beginning of this week, while I think they were very positive, they were framed sort of around the sort of heightened sense of fear and anxiety that I carry in the build-up to these appointments. But everything's fine. I've secured that first year in remission, and from that I'm doing well enough that I now only have to go for these check-ins every 3 months, so they're not as frequent anymore, which is quite nice because I only have that I only go through that process of sort of getting nervous about it and then that relief. I only go through it every I think 4 times a year instead of 5 now, which is really good, and it's a representation of how well my recovery is going. With COVID and everything going on and all of the the safety restrictions, it's changed quite a lot how it all works, so there's a heightened sense of security. It's not quite, I feel like the treatment centre I went to always, had that specific goal of trying to, aside from your chemotherapy, trying to make it as sort of calm and welcoming and relaxing an environment as possible to try and distract you from how unpleasant your situation might be and how, unpleasant chemotherapy can be, and, just generally trying to deal with that is pretty unpleasant and awful. I think I said unpleasant about 5 times now, so I'm going to stop saying that word. And I've thrown myself off completely trying to be funny, so that didn't work out that well for me. Yeah, so it's a bit trickier. Because I have my appointments and I have my treatment on the young adult ward, that meant that my dad could still come with me, which was really handy because it's good having that moral support there. And it also means that I could avoid public transport. Being somebody whose immune system is largely still recovering, it's pretty handy, considering I think I read a report that I think 1 in 16 people that's on the tube is infected with COVID, which is pretty crazy to think that, it has that sense of mobility in such an enclosed space when you're thinking about the London Underground. So not fun. I'm glad I could still avoid it. I think, yeah, it's a scary thing to have happen, and I always knew that this would happen. I always knew that the centre would sort of progressively become somewhere that I had all of this fear around, and it was always pleasant. It was always nice, and it was fun to go and catch up with nurses and patients that I recognised. That's kind of, it's not quite the case anymore though. I don't know if it's because of, the way COVID is affecting people's availability, or if it's people just changing roles or changing jobs, but the staff of nurses is very different to what I remembered. I got to catch up with Raj, who's one of my nurses from when I did chemo, and she's awesome. She's really lovely. So it was nice catching up with her. And Caroline as well, one of the staff nurses. So it was nice catching up with them. But you're sort of going with that mentality, thinking that even though it's maybe juvenile to think it in hindsight, but you go in thinking, oh, I get to go and have a nice catch up with everybody. But that's life. The way life works, people are going to be in different places. People don't stay put forever. I think the reason it's so affecting though is that you always have that present fear of relapse and having to go back and do more treatment. And I think the thought of having nurses that you recognise and not going in completely blind, like you still have that pre-existing support network, is quite reassuring. I mean, I like meeting new people anyway, so it wouldn't have been, the worst thing. It would have been fine. I like meeting new people, so getting to know new nurses would have been absolutely cool. I just think not having that support network anymore and potentially having to build a new one is kind of I think it just adds to the level of pressure. I think the patients, it's slightly different because there's a lot more complexity to why you don't see them there. I think despite the amount that you interact with people while you're doing treatment, not many people stay in touch or really talk too much after the fact. And that's not something I'm bitter about. That's something, as someone who went through the same experiences, I understand quite a bit. Not everyone, wants to talk about what happened to them online. And that makes total sense that you'd want to create that distance. It's tricky though, because there's some darker reasons why your friends might not be there anymore. I'd like to think that the people I'm not seeing because they're in recovery. Everything's gone well and they're off just doing their own thing and they've moved on. So there wouldn't really be a reason for me to know what's going on with them. I don't know that though. When I get down to the bottom of it, I don't know who's dead and I don't know who's alive, except for a specific few. And that's a scary thought. That's a really scary thought. So look, and beyond that, when you're there and you see this entirely new cast of patients, I think it really highlights how it's this illness, it's an indefinite cycle. Like, it never stops in its rampage, and it always finds someone new. It's not like we were the only people to get it and then we recovered or didn't and then moved on. It was there's always someone else, and that's horrible. It's a really disturbing thought, and in the moment it was upsetting. It was who next, especially with everything that's going on at the minute. Like, these people don't need this. Just from what I saw from going around and looking at the new COVID measures and how that landscape that I was so familiar with and how different it is, it must be so much worse doing treatment in a COVID environment. I mean, not only are all these measures and you've got you go around wearing masks and everything like this. If you're immunocompromised, the threat of death is so much more significant. I mean, I've got some semblance of an immune system, but I still have additional information to help, extra measures to keep me alive. I was getting the letters and the emails from the government telling me what I should do. And I've got to be careful enough, and I'm a year out. Like, imagine, and I know that I had barely any of an immune system when I was ill. So, can you imagine knowing that you've got to deal with that through all of this? It completely, it blows my mind, and I think it's why we've got to make sure we keep carrying on with bringing attention to all of this. I mean, I said in one of my first videos, there's tens of thousands of people who are going to die early, not because of COVID, but because of the way cancer treatment's going to be affected by COVID. And with the media attention going directly towards COVID, I don't think everyone's cognizant of that fact. And I think that's probably something we should all internalize and keep in mind, is that death toll that we see every day, that's not the only metric for how COVID has impacted us. And when eventually that starts going down with the rollout of the vaccine, and I hear a lot of people say, if we return to normal, humans are resilient, we're gonna get back to normal at some point. I'm not worried about the if, but the when. But long after that COVID, that COVID number hit zero for the daily death tolls, or the R number, or whatever metric you choose to follow, it's going to be a long time before we're back to normal. It shouldn't be normal, but one is too many when it comes to deaths from cancer. But to think that for a long time we're going to be dealing with the consequences of this, and not just cancer, the treatment for all number of conditions and illnesses is really quite hard to think about sometimes. But it's something that I think we have a responsibility to think about. I don't think we should shy away from that thought, because that ignorance will only drive us towards inaction. And the way that COVID has, disrupted the work of a lot of charities, or it's affected people who try and keep us aware of the impacts of this, of COVID on everything else. I think we have a responsibility to try and at least keep ourselves informed, so that we can keep that discussion on it going, and then from that we contribute in whatever ways we can. So going back for a moment, when I went in to see my doctor, and I'll probably start wrapping up in a minute, because I don't want this to be, too long of... I feel like this video has become weirdly doom and gloom when I've had incredibly good news. I think receiving that good news makes you feel a bit guilty, though, or at least I feel a bit guilty. I think after you go in and you see these people suffering, and you're supposed to be happy that you don't have to go back to it. I know everybody else is over the moon about it, and I am happy and I'm grateful, but I don't feel that joy. I feel some relief, but I got no enthusiasm. I'm just grateful that my head's not back on that block. And when we left my doctor's office and we had that conversation, and we were chatting about what it was like moving out and my book and stuff, and what it's like living with Shannon and everything, and I was saying how great it was going, and we were going through sort of the usual questions of any complaints, how's my surgery site doing. To answer that question, it's okay. I'm still getting used to the my endoprosthesis. It aches occasionally. I don't know if it's because I'm thinking about it, but it aches while I'm talking about it. But other than that, it went all well. And when we came out, my dad said something to the effect of another one down, or that you haven't got to do another one for another 3 months, which is true, and it's reason to celebrate. But I've hit a year, so I'm 2 years in to this journey, that will last in total for about 11. So I need to be monitored for another 9 years. So those feelings that I have to contend with every time I do this, it's something that, for the most part, is going to be a permanent fixture of my life, and I think I'm still figuring out how that works. But I'm always hopeful for for how it's going to go. And I think it's something that I always use as a mentality, and it's something I said, I recorded in my journal, was while you're alive, there's an opportunity for self-improvement and for achievement. And I think no matter how dire things get, we've got to keep pursuing that opportunity. And I think as terrifying as these experiences are, that's the key thing I take away from it. And that's something that I would urge everyone to carry forward as well. Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. And I think I'll probably wrap up there given the time. So, as always, thank you for coming to see these videos and coming and stopping by the stream. I think I see, at least in the production quality, I'm not sure about the host, a noticeable improvement each time I make these videos. I'm getting more familiar with the process. Hopefully it's becoming perhaps not entertaining, but at least more informative and more accessible. And over time, we'll just see where things take us. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where things go. So yeah, thank you for stopping by, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.